going to share our experience of checking in to Mexico on our private boat. The first thing I did when I was researching is I came across this website, Visiting Mexico by Private Boat, and it gave us several steps that we needed to follow. The first step said to go to the website for the Banjocito or the Mexican bank and fill out the process for a TIP, a temporary import permit for vessels. This website's actually pretty easy to maneuver because it has a button in the top right corner where you can push for English, and the whole website goes into English mode. That makes it nice. But you're basically just going to click on Start a New Application, and then on the next page you'll just accept the agreements and acknowledgments. And then you'll get to the page where it says click to select permit type. Of course, boats and vessels will be what you would click on. On this page, you're just going to hit continue after you read through. Some of this says something about you can apply for your TIP anywhere from 10 to 60 days prior to entering Mexico. And then you'll acknowledge on the next page some things before continuing. Just be sure to read through that. And then you're going to go into the forms that you're going to start filling out with all your boat documentation information, your information, passport information. It gives a whole bunch of different things, but it's fairly easy to figure out. Once you're done, it gives you a form that you've completed everything. You'll receive an email with the tip, your permit number, and proof of payment. Our tip cost us $56 when we did it, and you'll want to print that out. We were told here that you only need a tip if you plan to stay a month or longer. However, at another port of entry, you may be told something differently, so I advise you go ahead and have it so not to delay your check-in process even further. Step 2 is where things got tricky, at least they did for me. We went to this website that they tell you to go to complete the spreadsheet with information of the vessel and a passenger form. However, when you get there, you can click on English, but nothing changes to English on that first page. And even trying to figure out where to go to on that page was painful, to say the least. If you speak Spanish fluently or you have someone in your group who does, I highly suggest that they sit with you to do this part of your form. Although we did have that, and it was still a struggle to figure out where to go to find this form. After about an hour or so, we eventually clicked on something that got us to a form that I did fill in with all of our information and saved it as a PDF file. But honestly, I couldn't even tell you which icon we ended up clicking on that was right. Not to mention figuring out where to find the so-called directory list of INM ports, which is National Immigration Institution ports, to email this crew list to. Well, that never happened. If you also struggle trying to find this form, I highly suggest just typing up a form with the following information for your own crew list to take with you. You'll need your boat name, the flag of your boat, registration number, hailing port, type of boat, gross tonnage, the flag and nationality for the boat length, beam, draft, hull material, the color of the hull, how many motors you have on your boat, the port you left from, the port you entered, the captain and crew's names, nationality, passport numbers, and birth date. They ended up just giving us this form to fill out, which is what I'm showing you here with all of that information. And since we never emailed the crew list to the INM, we skipped step number 4 on this website. The next page just talks about your passport and how everyone is required to carry a current and valid passport at all times. It also said that once you arrive at immigration office, that each crew member will have to show their passport and fill out an entry permit called an FMM, multiple immigration form, which simply is the form required to enter Mexico by boat. It also says that you would pay a 332 Mexican peso fee at the bank. However, we were never asked to do this. This is the FMM form and what it looks like, and in our case, this form was given to us at the port captain's office on the second day. Don't misplace this form because you do have to surrender it when you check out. I suggest making at least 10 copies of everything, passports, boat documentation, your tip, everything you already have before you come. We arrived in Isla, Mexico on a Friday evening, so we put up our quarantine flag and waited until Monday morning to go into land to begin the check-in process when everything was open. We had been told by some other cruisers that we could park our dinghy at the dinghy dock by Mule 7, a restaurant there, and go in and patronize them, and they would allow us to leave our dinghies there while we went to check in. The food and drinks were delicious. We took the walk over to the port captain's office where the 5-hour process for the day began. It happened to be an extremely busy day in there with cruisers and also all of the sailors from the Regata al Sol, which is a biannual sailing race from Pensacola, Florida to Isla that had been going on that weekend. The guy doing the check-ins was friendly and helpful for the most part. Again, I highly recommend you have someone in your group who is fluent in Spanish to be with you if you do not speak or understand the language. I fully believe this was the game changer for us. We had another 2 to 3 forms to fill out on top of what we already had, our 3 copies of our boat documentation, passports, the tip, and crew lists. And once we filled out these forms, he stamped them, and we walked to the little print shop to get more copies made of all these new forms. Yep, you guessed it. Then it was back to the port captain's office where we took all these new copies to hand in to them again. More waiting inside until we finally got them stamped again, and then we had to walk to the immigration office with all the new paperwork to give them 2 copies of everything. Yep, more waiting there until they finally stamped our passports and all the paperwork, and we paid the immigration fee, which for us was $85 US. And by now you're probably getting the sequence of events here. So yes, back to the port captain's office with all of these documentations once again to turn them in. Then yes, there was a lot more waiting and waiting until around about 3:30 we finally got the final stamps for the day, and the agricultural and immigration guys were dinghied out to our boats to do the boat search. And insert beautiful sunset where we talk about what I feared the most, the boat search. I had heard horror stories about how they don't allow you to bring meats, fruits, vegetables, dairy products, liquor, anything in from the US. I was a little concerned about that, but they looked in our fridge and freezer, just said no US products can go into their trash, and that was pretty much it. But again, that was just our experience. We were under the impression that the next day we would just need to take all the paperwork that the agricultural and immigration guys gave us back after boarding our boat. So we dinghied over to Miramar Lobster House where we tied up our dinghy, went inside and bought some lunch and had a great meal before walking back over to the port captain's office to turn in those papers. However, when we got there, we ended up having to fill out another couple of forms, wait for more stamps. Then we were told to take those forms he gave us to the bank to pay the fees. What fees? We think it was the port captain fees. It ended up being 767 pesos, and you could only use pesos, no American money. But it ended up being $45.96 US. We took proof of payment back to the port captain's office, finally got the final stamps, and here is all the paperwork that we ended up taking. Hold on to it all because you have to go back to check out and you need all of your paperwork in order before they will allow you to leave. We were definitely blessed to have Marilla from our buddy boat SV Uno Mos, one more, to help us through this process. I'm telling you, that was a game changer. She speaks fluent Spanish, and we could not have done this without her help. So if you do not have someone in your group that speaks Spanish or you don't, hire an agent.